historic best of 3 deck tech gameplay video on a very simple mono white weenies. Weenies is in parentheses. It's more like it's mono white with a large amount of fairly small dudes. With that out of the way, we'll just try and rattle through this really fast. Early on, we have 3 copies of Speakers of the Heavens. It's a nice little, besides just being a good 1-drop, can help to stabilize your life total. Vigilance allows you to be both aggressive and defensive, which is something the deck likes to do. And of course, if by some miracle you happen to hit the 7 life more than your starting thing, the ability to generate late game angels to hopefully get you over that last hump is a little nice bit of gravy on top. Running 4 Thraben Inspectors is just a good 1-drop that, as the card suggests, creates allows you to investigate and make a clue token so you can cash it in and draw later. It's also just, again, a 1-mana 1/2. Nothing to really freak out over. Running 3 copies of Stonecoil Serpent, which can be, of course, anywhere from an early drop to a late drop. Nice to have if you happen to flood out with a lot of mana. The Reach and the Trample gives you a good amount of both defense and offense. Or offense, more like defense and evasion, but anywho. The protection from multicolor is nice. You'll see through this deck that we're trying to take advantage of as much protection as we can. Being a mono white list, we kind of lack a whole lot of conventional defensive tools. We also have 2 Adorned Pouncers. Simple 2-mana, 1/1 double strike, and you can eternalize it later on as another big boy threat in the late game. And sometimes just a good 2-drop, though Adorned Pouncer is often one of those cards that gets cut from in game 2 and 3. Since it's not vital to the game plan, it's just a nice game 1 applier of pressure. Running 4 Ajani's Pridemate because we have several forms or ways to get little incremental bits of life gain here and there, allowing the Ajani's Pridemate not only to be an early game force, but allow it to scale relatively well into the late game if left unchecked. Also running 3 Hushbringers is a good, again, little incremental bit of life gain here and there, as well as an evasive threat in the late game. And the secondary ability of creatures entering and dying, their triggers not hitting, does happen to hose our opponents more than it hoses us. Granted, it does in fact hose us, but the card is good enough in the meta, I believe, for the card to warrant being played. But if you, it's one of those, or if you don't have this, like a Takali Honor Guard or some similar effect, will do just fine. Running a single copy of Maul the Skyclaves is just a way to give any creature that happens to stick a form of evasion, or 2 forms of evasion really, in flying and first strike, so you can hopefully go over the top, which will allow you to hopefully close out games quicker. 2 copies of History of Benalia as just a good token generator, and when the saga finishes, a way to sort of pump out a little bit of extra damage. Running 4 copies of Skyclave Apparition, just a general good removal spell on legs. Granted, this is one of the more glaring sort of non-synergies with the Hushbringer, but both of these cards are good enough, I feel, at least anecdotally, for Historic in Best of 3 to warrant them, even if sometimes they sort of conflict with one another. Running 3 Conclave Tribunals is a sort of generic removal spell for most anything, and the ability to, say, cash in creatures, if we wouldn't have been able to attack through it anyway, to sort of use them as a removal spell is a very nice thing. Also running 2 copies of Elspeth's Nightmare as a sort of, besides just being an additional token creator with its -2, we can apply more pressure with its -1, or use its -3 to sort of, besides gain incremental life for the Ajani's Pridemate, as a way to sort of stabilize against the aggro mirror. And the ability to escape it late game allows you to make use of your graveyard, where normally, and really, not normally, most mono white decks do lack a sort of card draw, and escape is a sort of form of card draw or card advantage, as well as just being a good thing to sink a lot of mana to if you happen to flood late game. Also running 3 Venerated Loxodons as a way to not only be able to pump up our own board, but a way to cheat out a bigger threat potentially earlier in white is very nice. This is another one of those can be non-bow synergies with Hushbringer, but this is a significantly lesser one. So, but again, I think it's a good enough effect. And also, even if it isn't, Venerated Loxodons, we're not married to these, and sometimes these will also come out when we go to games 2 and 3 when we sideboard out. And at the top of the curve, I have a single copy of Approach of the Second Sun, as just a sort of, should the game go on forever and ever and the board happen to stall out, Approach gives us a more a hard win condition that the deck might normally otherwise lack. Lands, relatively simple. I'm running 21 snow-covered plains for the 2 Faceless Havens as a way to sort of bank on a creature, even if everything else happens to get swept. The ability to always be able to just hit with a 4/3 and apply pressure is a very, very nice thing. And a 4 power little land can close out the game relatively quickly. Also running 2 Arch of Orazcas as a sort of another form of card draw. Ascend is not a terribly difficult thing to actually acquire when you're making tokens, either with the clue tokens from the Thraben Inspector or the creature tokens with, say, a History of Benalia. It is not too terribly difficult to ascend and acquire it, since it lasts permanently once acquired. Also gives us a way to draw cards as of the recording of this video, in a color that lacks, at least within the actual color itself, an ability to draw cards. And our Arch of Orazca lets us do this. Sideboard, relatively simple. Graph-Digger's Cages for your Cocos and some graveyard matchups. I have 2 Apostles of Purifying Light. The protection from black is very relevant, as black is one of the more popular colors, and most single target removal that you'll see, at least anecdotally, is a lot of black removal spells. Your Fatal Pushes, your Eliminates of the World, and also the ability for the Apostle to also be brought in as another form of graveyard hate. Being able to pay 2 to exile a card from a graveyard is also very nice. We have 2 Thalias as a way to sort of slow down in opposing control matchups that are looking to really disrupt our plan, whether it be through hand hate or removal or board wipes. Thalia gives us an extra turn to do this, and sometimes it's all this deck needs. We run 3 Unbreakable Formations. I usually run this as more of a sweeper protection in your more blue-white control matchups. It happens to sometimes double as a like board pump if you happen to addendum it, which is very nice. Running 2 copies of Sword of Body and Mind for much the same reason that we like the protection from multicolored of the Stonecoil Serpent. The Sword of Body and Mind gives us protection from 2 more colors, as well as the protection from black that comes from the Apostle. The sword also, besides just giving us our creature in question a stat buff and a protection from green and blue, it also adds another win con to the general, beat dudes down or the Approach of the Second Sun. It adds a 3rd win con in milling an opponent out. We can also generate blockers, not only for the Ascend of the Arch, as well as just generally just kind of making wolf tokens to block with if we need to. We run 2 Wrath of God, since against the aggro mirror, sometimes we do have to sweep our own board. We don't really mind this as terribly much, as we have, again, the Faceless Haven and the Elspeth and even the Adorned Pouncer in the main board to more easily recover from wiping a board. Also run 2 Ugins. Ugins can be a nice sort of sideboard tech piece against either the really aggressive decks that happen to be, at least 1 color, or it can be a very good way to try and go toe-to-toe against a mid-range deck if you feel like your opponent's mid-range deck will really, really mess you up. And that is the base list for Mono White Aggro, basically. With that, we'll go straight in to game number 1. Game number 1 with Mono White Aggro. 2 lands, things to do. Sign me up. See what our opponent plays. Playing, what, Kiri, whatever her name is. Usually played in, like creatureless control decks historically. But granted, could be wrong. We'll Speaker on 1, Ajani's on 2, and just hope to develop a good oppressive board state. Teamer colors out of our opponent. Go ahead and play the planes. And again, keep with the initial plan of just playing a lot of dudes and hitting our opponent in the head. Hi, Carmel. How are you doing, baby girl? I imagine your sister will be very jealous that I'm not acknowledging her. Let's see. Maybe I would try and take some sort of guess to what our opponent's playing, but it's a little difficult to intuit. Hi, Carmel. You want to come up? Yeah, come hang out with Dad. Dad's kind of cool. Go ahead and swing out. Yeah. There you go. It's alright. Calm down. Brown sugar. I need my window, Dad. Opponent cracks a Fabled Passage in response. Playing whites, some sort of 4-color shenanigans. I would say some Omnath-less, but... So it is elementals. Is it 4-color or 5-color elementals? I don't know. Next turn, we'll probably just play a Tribunal. Exiling their Risen Reef. Leaving them with an empty board, and us with an aggressive board state. You gonna get in front of the microphone, baby girl? Yeah, I know. Of course you have to do it. There you go. Well, it is an Omnath deck. It's just not 4-color Omnath. Again, the original plan sticks. We just Conclave Tribunal their Omnath away. Let's see. If we play the Pridemate, we should be able to play the Pridemate and play the Conclave Tribunal, tapping the just played Ajani's Pridemate as the 4th mana needed. Opponent could sack a fetch land, but I don't know if they would with that deck. Hitting for 7 life, or going to hit for 7 life. They do sack the Fabled Passage. Opponent concedes. Booyah! Bang, 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 bang. I'm feeling a little... If this game goes to game... If I don't win game number 2, I might bring in Sword of Body and Mind. I think we might just, though, run it as it is. Once a game. I'm hoping that their 4-color mana base means they will be a little bit too slow, so we'll probably try to maybe mulligan to 5 if we need to for a good hand. Because this is not a good hand. That's better, since we can just chuck back a Plains. Plains back to the bottom. We'll go ahead and play different Plains and play a Speaker of the Heavens on turn 1. Ooh, drew an Adorned Pouncer, so we can at least curve into some pressure. As well as with the Skyclave Apparition we have in our hand, we have a good sort of base upon which we can answer whatever they play. Playing non-black elementals, I guess. Stomping Ground untapped with a Leafkin Druid. Still going to do the same play. We'll go ahead and attack with the Speaker regardless, since we still get the life. Even though they will clearly block it because they have a brain. I wouldn't be surprised to see a Teamer Omnath. A Risen Reef will do. We'll play the Arch of Orazca and play a Skyclave Apparition, exiling the Risen Reef. Gonna make them... well... yeah. Go ahead and just continue to apply the pressure. We'll save the Conclave Tribunal for things above the 4 cost limitation that the Apparition has. They correct their Fabled Passage, finding a Plains, and we swing for some Damaggio. See what our opponent does. They have access to 4 mana. Haven't played the land for turn. Yasharn's a good one. We will, since Yasharn is 4 mana, just play another Plains next turn and play our other Skyclave, exiling the Yasharn. Again, we want to save our Conclave Tribunal for things that cannot be hit by the Apparition. Swing with our board. Opponent down to 10. We're at 23. Honestly, pretty decisive. Teamer Omnath, pinging for 2. Gets rid of one, the Skyclave Apparition, holding the Yasharn, so they get a 4/4 token. Will likely play the Tribunal this turn, targeting Teamer Omnath. We'll go ahead and not attack. It sucks to have to lay off a turn of pressure, but we don't really have a good board state. Another Yasharn from our opponent. Yasharn is an elemental. I forgot about that. I suppose that's a good reason to splash white. And Yasharn's a good color, or good card, sorry. Worthy of splashing white. With the existence of all your sacrifice decks afloating around. Realm Walker and enemy elemental. Our opponent has one spicy meatball. Play another Skyclave Apparition. Probably getting rid of the Yasharn. God, I really don't like this. For reference, it was actually correct to get the Sword of Body and Mind, should this game go totally out of the way. I would be surprised if they don't have Chandra Awakened Inferno. Okay, so this... yeah, it's this non-black elemental tribal, which is fine. Does explain the Kahira, sorry. Since it is a lord for elementals. Another Omnath, or Teamer Omnath. Alright, targeting the second Skyclave Jesus Christ. We'll just eat it. Sorry, my brain's... Yeah, we lose this game. We don't win. It was a mistake. But I understand what my mistake was. I'm actually gonna bring in Swords of Body and Mind and some Ugins, since I'm going to believe they're going to matter. We'll probably get rid of maybe a couple Stone Coils and a couple Adorned Pouncers. Going to try and match their, like, just kind of mid-rangey, play a bunch of good cards and just hope to eventually kind of drown your opponent in card advantage style deck. Match 3 of Game 1. Go ahead and play first. Nothing on 1, but we have a 2 and a 3. And the lands to play. We're not going to look a gift horse in the mouth and we'll just run with it. Plains and pass. Even if we happen to lose, though, Elemental Tribal. It is a tribal deck. So you have my respect. Play another Plains. Play the Ajani's Pridemate. Pass our turn. Opponent has a Teamer Triumph out. Stomping Ground untapped. And the... Oh, the green mana dork. Dude. Cool. Hey. We're gonna go ahead and hold back the Skyclave Apparition as I imagine some 4-drop coming next turn. And Scott, that is the high end of what the apparition can deal with. Risen Reef from our opponent. Do they miss a land drop? They do, which is actually very important. Might still, however, apparition the Risen Reef away, since I'd be surprised that they miss more than one land drop. Just looking to apply pressure. Next turn might just play an Elspeth. Another Stomping Ground untapped from our opponent, so they didn't miss another land drop, so it was correct not to try and play around it, or to try and capitalize. It was just a silly thing to do. Teamer Omnath, pinging for 2. Not terribly surprising, in all honesty. We'll go ahead and turn on the Faceless Haven. And play a Thraben Inspector. We'll just swing with the Haven. See if they take the trade. They're down to 4, but they sort of appear to have stabilized in some way. Manually tapping from our opponent. Playing another Risen Reef. Intentionally leaving a Stomping Ground untapped. So maybe a Hellhound? Correct. Trying to farm that Risen Reef trigger. Maybe looking for another land drop they missed. I believe that is the case. Hellhound gets bigger. Omnath makes the Hellhound even bigger. Another Hellhound. Another land. And again, the Omnath on one big old Hellhound. I think we're just going to attempt to sacrifice our clue and look for more lands here. Since we really want to get to Ugin, since we're a little concerned about our ability to, you know, not die and all that. So we're just not going to attack. Hope and pray we get to 8 mana eventually and are able to downtick Ugin for a sufficient amount. Reflections of Lit Jara. Okay, I don't care how this game goes at all. My dude is one spicy meatball. Arch from our opponent, or from us, sorry. Go ahead and play in Elspeth, which allows us to ascend. We'll go ahead and make some human soldiers to block. And playing a Speaker and a Thraben Inspector, since again, we're wanting to just gum up the board with some dudes until we can hit Ugin mana. We're at what? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Need 2 more lands. And of course, now our planet did play the Reflections of Lit Jara, of course, naming Elemental. You cast a spell of the chosen type. Another Reflections of Lit Jara. So we're going to get a lot of copies here. That's not a land, but a Tribunal is something. So we'll go ahead and probably Tribunal away their Teamer Omnath. We'll pay the mana to sack the clue. Finding a Faceless Haven. Getting closer and closer. And again, we're just going to generate some dudes and try and not die. Since I believe once we resolve the Ugin and exile wipe everything on the board for a sufficient amount. Copying, oh god, casting 1 Omnath and getting 2 copies from the Reflections of Lit Jara. God, I love this, unironically. So they're going to start pinging down all of our stuff. They might just ping down me, actually. Who knows? 1 ping goes to a Skyclave on the board, removing that. Second Omnath. We'll be pinging my Speaker of the Heaven. Again, with all these copies of Omnath, the Risen Reef is a trigger. And they are just accruing some cards here and there. Hellhound getting so scary. To be fair, our opponent does have a menacing board. Final Omnath, targeting our Elspeth, but Elspeth was at 1 loyalty anyway. She was not long for this world. Again, another land. Landfall triggers from the Risen Reef and the 2 Hellhounds on the board. Crack the Fabled Passage, do it all again. We have no issue chumping all day long. Again, we're gonna just wait to get to Ugin mana. If we manage to do that, we might, or we almost certainly win. Realm Walker, naming Elemental. Getting a buttload of copies of the thing. Hi, Carmel. You gotta decide, do you want to hang out with dear old Cat Dad? Yeah! As our opponent is just, you know, generating value. And, you know, lots of triggers. Lots of elementals entering the battlefield. What, Carmel? Hi, babe girl. I know, Dad took you from your perch in the window. Dad's a big old butt. Finally, the 2 Hellhounds are attacking. We chump all day long. Please drop a land. Please drop a land. I don't know what our opponent could still have left to do. And we drew a land. The biggest thing on their board is Litjara at 5, so we'll just go ahead and... that's actually a problem. It's still worth it, however. We'll go ahead and exile for 5. This will get rid of our Conclave Tribunal, but we can deal with that. They get their original Omnath that was tucked under the Tribunal back, but they only having 1 creature on the board is a far better place to be in. See what our opponent wants to do. With another Ugin in hand, I feel relatively certain that we have turned the corner, as it was. Or as it were. And now we just wait. Good showing game 1, which is always nice. Opponent is having some connection issues. There we go. And either he chose to ping the Ugin, or... Nope, he chose to ping it. Never mind. Brushfire Elemental from our opponent. Another Brushfire. Played Fabled Passage, or cracking the Fabled Passage to get some landfall triggers on the Omnath and on both of the Brushfire Elementals. Again, with the second Ugin in hand, we're feeling pretty safe. Risen Reef enters the battlefield. Draws a card. Leafkin Druid. Another Risen Reef trigger. Getting a Stomping Ground. And then landfall triggers. Swinging for 6, 12. 12 and 3 is 15. Going down to 5, and that's if he ignores my Ugin altogether. Playing another land, though. He's getting real close to just killing me this turn. 16. Wow, he happened to squeeze it out. Another land gave him exactly 20. I'm not even mad, brother. Good game from our opponent. To our opponent's credit, if he didn't draw the nuts right there, I think we would have won next turn. Anywho, on to game number 2. Game number 2 with the old Mono White Aggro. And we'll play first. 3 lands, 4 spells, things to do on curve. Can't ask for much more, honestly. Go ahead and plains on turn 1 and play a Thraben Inspector. I'm sorry, does he have one of those... Oh, this is the Kaldheim slaves, I think, right? Go ahead and play another plains and just play the Ajani's Pridemate. And swing with a Thraben Inspector. Another island from our opponent. Wall of Lost Thoughts. Milling me. Alright, very spicy. We'll go ahead and take a turn off and play the Venerated Loxodon. Cashing in our creatures to make them just a little bit bigger. Next turn, we can just play a Snow-Covered Plains and play an Elspeth. Another Wall of Lost Thoughts from our opponents. I believe I see a Sword of Body and Mind, so we have some protection from the blue shenanigans. Go ahead and, let's see, try and spread out our buffs pretty evenly. That was the wrong way. I should have buffed the Pridemate so we can kill a wall. Never mind, our opponent just scoops. Oh, come on, man. Don't, like, play a fun deck and then just, like, cave. I don't have any reshuffle effects in the deck. So we'll go ahead and just play some Swords of Body and Mind. Get rid of the Stone Coil Serpents, seeing how they're not that good. Since I imagine our opponent is playing a monocolored deck. I could be wrong. Bring in a Thalia and probably cut... I don't know what we're going to cut. Maybe one Inspector for another Thalia. Since a lot of these blue are blue-based mill decks, if this is what it is, and their opponent just didn't have to draw badly. But a lot of these mono-blue mill lists do run a good amount of non-creatures. In your Drowned Secrets and your Maddening Cacophonies and all that jazz. 2 lands, but 3 2-drops? Alright, I'll take it. It's a bit of a sketchy keep, but we did win game 1, so I'll take what I can get. I think we'll play the Hushbringer on 2, since cards like the Wall of Lost Thoughts, their mill effect is an enter the battlefield trigger, and Hushbringer cancels that. As well as making room for the Ajani's Pridemate to get real big and scary. Island from our opponent the first 2 turns. A whopping load of nothing. And again, Hushbringer on turn 2. Luckily, our 2 games, both against the Elementals... Well, I'm sorry. Dispersed my Hushbringer. Sorry. Hopefully, the second game will be as good as the first game in showing the strength of Hushbringer. Psychic Corrosion from our opponent. Oh, we're in some fucking trouble. Oh boy. We might act... Oh, I can't play Skyclave since it's turned off. Our opponent is going all fucking in. Oh, we're in... We might actually lose. Maybe not. That might be a little bit hyperbolic. We'll go ahead and play a Thalia and an Ajani. Go ahead and attack the Ashiok, since we want to try and at least somewhat limit how badly we get milled. God, this is gonna suck. But again, I applaud our opponent for their commitment to the bit. Expel from Orazca. What is our opponent's deck? Yeah, I guess it's mono blue mill. Alright. And I guess that's it, weirdly. I applaud our opponent's commitment to the bit. Also, we'll let this prove as a sort of example of just because something feels bad like milling doesn't make it good. Our opponent proved perfectly that sometimes a lot of players have this feeling where getting milled feels bad, but if you just say, run creatures, you can usually kill them before they do things. I felt pretty confident about our ability to win that game. Anywho, with that out of the way, like the video if you like the video, sub if you like me, and if you have any sort of questions or, say, budget sort of replacement questions, just be nice and polite, and that's what the comments are down for below. Thank you all, and remember, I'm pulling for you. We're all in this together.